I love financial independence because it allows me to break the rules and live outside the norm. Like, no one has time for 40 years of traditional employment. But little did I realize I left one set of rules only to get caught up in another, the rules of personal finance. For example, let's take a look at one popular idea: spend less than you earn and invest the difference. My friend Jeremy Schneider says this all the time, and for the most part, he's right. This is a great principle and one of the pillars of building wealth. But where we go wrong is when we get too fixated on a rule and let it box us in. Do we have to spend less than we earn every year? No, we realize that's a silly idea. If we want to plan a year of travel, take off time to raise a newborn, or work on launching a business, that might be a year you spend more than you make. And that's okay. I'm not saying Jeremy hasn't had a year where he spent more than he's earned. Knowing him, I'm guessing he's had a couple. But sometimes these general guidelines create a limited mindset. Another example is the 4% rule. This one boxed me in for years, making me think that I needed to reach my FIRE number before I could retire. I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and one person who's really impacted me is Diania Merriam. Through her 20s and early 30s, Diana worked in sales. In the midst of one of her peak earning years, she decided to take a 2-month sabbatical to walk 500 miles across northern Spain. A few years later, she quit that job entirely and retired from her corporate career at 33. Diana then founded the Economy Conference, what she calls a party about money. The conference wasn't profitable for the first few years, but Diana didn't care because she felt like organizing this event was her calling. She is literally the definition of rewriting the rulebook, which is why I wanted to have her on the show. I'm hoping through her story, you identify a personal finance rule that might be limiting your thinking. We get into topics like how to get your employer to say yes to a sabbatical, getting comfortable leaving a high-paying job, right-sizing work, and more. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the rough and tumbling New Jerseyan, Diania Merriam. You know those moments where you think, I wish I would have learned this in school? Those are the topics that we love to talk about. Join me each week as I interview experts sharing their strategies for solving problems that us young adults will face throughout our 20s and 30s. So what are you waiting for? If you want new episodes about adulting advice every Monday, hit that follow button. Well, Diana, it's great to have you on the show. You've been on my guest list for a while now, so I don't know how we haven't made this happen, but I appreciate you making the time. I love that, you had this goal that you wanted to do 5 by 40, but I think a lot of people in this second generation of FI right now too, you kind of tore up that initial playbook and you're like, you know what? Life changes and I want to have flexibility whenever it comes to my financial journey. And I think that's some of the real power of pursuing FI is that you won't get this flexibility, or you won't unlock all of these things once you hit FIRE, but you start to recognize and allow yourself to unlock some of these things throughout the entire journey. And you quit your corporate career at 33 for various reasons, most that you really couldn't anticipate. But you were also, even leading up to that, doing a lot of things too that probably set you back on your own FI journey. But at the same time, you kind of have to go for it sometimes. You were talking about your 70-year-old grandparents that wanted to hike the Camino, and you're like, holy cow, I want to do that. And you know what the best time to do that is? Probably right now. Probably not when I'm set, but when I'm 30. So I want to talk about the Camino and your sabbatical to start things out here. Where were you in your career at that time? And what led you to decide that you wanted to take a sabbatical and hike the Camino?
Yeah. So where I was in my career is I was crushing it, right? I was doing really, really well. That is what I think gave me the confidence to make a pretty bold ask, which is to take 2 months off of work unpaid. At that point, they had been giving me these huge raises. I think I got 20% raises 3 years in a row. And so my income was really jumping. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, cool. I don't want more money. I want to go have a world adventure. And the way I kind of was led to make that ask, just kind of taking a step back. I mean, even just starting cleaning up my finances was partially driven by the Camino because I was 28 and I realized that I wanted this trip for when I was 30. So I had 2 years to figure out financially how I was going to make it happen. And that's when I discovered the FIRE movement. I got out of debt, 30 grand of debt in 11 months. And I started saving and investing 60% of my income from there. So I was setting myself up financially to do that thing. But I think there was this beautiful alignment that happened where the timeline fit with me becoming financially ready, which also fit with me crushing it from a sales perspective. And so I had this like unique point of leverage to be able to ask my employer, let's get a little creative. Rather than giving me another raise, let me take this sabbatical, which at the time I had no examples of anyone successfully negotiating a sabbatical. I thought I was going to have to quit my job. Like that's just what I thought I was going to have to do.
Were you willing to quit your job too at that point in time? Or
it sounds good on a podcast to say that I was.
Yeah.
But I don't know, right? I don't believe in alternate realities where like, what would I have done in that scenario? I would hope that I was bold enough. I have a history of making bold moves, so I would hope that I was bold enough, but I don't know. I think that it would have been tough to just quit because at the time I was with the company for 5 or 6 years. I liked my job. And again, I was like doing really well. I was being rewarded. I felt like a very important part of the team. And I had this great boss who really went to bat for me to be able to, negotiate this sabbatical. So yeah, I think if I was a year into the position or I haven't proven myself yet, or I wasn't one of the top salespeople, I think I wouldn't have had as much leverage to say, hey, I want to do this a little differently, because they just really didn't want to lose me. And also the way I pitched it was, and this is unique in being a woman to be able to pitch it this way, but to say like, hey, I don't want to have a child. If I were pregnant, I would be taking 3 months off. I want to go birth a world adventure and come back a better person, like instead of like a sleep deprived person, They just loved how I set it up that way. And so that's how that all went down.
I took a career sabbatical in 2020, and it was like one of the best things that I did for my own career, not even just for me personally, but for my career, to give myself some white space and to reevaluate what I want. And I came back really refreshed and excited to work again. And I'd be curious to know if that happened to you. I know you got sick near the end of the Camino too, so maybe it was kind of like a stumble into the finish line, but did you feel like the Camino kind of reinvigorated you a little bit whenever it came to your career, or did it do the opposite and you're like, man, I want to be out of these four walls more often now?
Well, I think it reoriented me towards what really matters in life, which is my health and relationships. And there's an aspect to that in my work. Like to this day, if people ask me, what do you miss about your corporate career? It's my colleagues.
Yeah.
I just got married in June and most of them were there. I was just texting another one this morning, like right before this interview, like I loved my colleagues. I felt like they were my family. There's challenges with that when it's within a corporate environment, but to me, reorienting myself towards what really matters in life, and it's not work, where previously I had such an identity around my corporate career. It fed my ego a lot. I had this office in the Empire State Building. You know what I mean? I had these celebrity clients. Like it made me feel like a hotshot, but like, can I have a sense of self-worth that is rooted in something more real than a job, for instance? I also felt like just my identity around work, I had mentioned I was like very identified with my job and this idea of achievement and climbing the corporate ladder and all of that kind of stuff. And when I was on the Camino, no one cared what I did for work. No one asked me what I did for work. It's like, what is the spiritual reason that you're walking the Camino? How much water did you drink today? Are your feet okay? Like those are the questions that people were asking me. And that was very freeing in a way that I didn't expect.
Yeah, did the kind of rough and tumble New Yorker side conflict with what I would imagine is like a generous nature of the hiking the Camino?
Yeah, I mean, I had thought of myself like an asshole New Yorker. Even to this day, I still have dreams about people walking slow in front of me on the sidewalk and like throttling them. Like I would get so angry. And I think on the Camino, I just found this almost like maternal instinct of wanting to take care of people around me. So like, for example, most people were carrying like a liter or two of water. I was carrying 3. And it's because I kept running into people who had run out of water. And I felt the need to like have extra so that I could help. Or I learned a lot about like how to wear your pack correctly so that it doesn't like hurt your shoulders and it sits right on your hips. And so I would see people kind of struggling and their back hurts, and I could see the way the pack was sitting on them wasn't right. And I'd just walk up to people. You mentioned like I just walked up to you at FinCon. Like I just walked up to them and I'm like, I just noticed this about your pack. Will you please let me adjust it? And I'm sitting there tugging on them and pulling on them and pushing it up above their hips. And it's like, oh, wow, that feels better. I loved that. There was this one, I think the best night of the Camino. And it's funny that we're talking about the Camino because it just came up in my Facebook memories that in September is when I started 7 years ago. I keep seeing the memories pop up on Facebook and it's just reminding me so much about it. But there was this one night that we were in this like very small town that didn't have a lot of, restaurants and that kind of stuff. And so a bunch of us went to a grocery store and like bought the ingredients that we could. And I made this like, I kind of directed the kitchen on like, those people are chopping and those people are sauteing and those people, right? And so we like orchestrated this whole like cooking for 15 people. And we all had this like beautiful meal together. And then at the end of it, they all sang me a song.
Whoa.
There's like a song from the 50s, like with the name Diana in it. And they like sang it to me. I have a video of it. I'm like, can't wait for it to pop up. But not that, oh, these people celebrated me. It's just this spirit of like taking care of each other that I didn't know that I had that in me, And so to get to know myself and like what I'm capable of and what drives me on a deeper level versus my cultural conditioning around ambition and climbing the ladder, I think over time, it like planted the seed for me to like change my ambitions. And now my ambitions are like not even in the same ballpark as when I was in my mid-20s.
Isn't it so bizarre to, like you said, 7 years ago that you did the Camino, and you were such a different person 7 years ago. You were starting this kind of career sabbatical, working in this high-paying sales job, and now look at your profile now. You are the creator of Economy, a conference, a party about money, and you are married now, and you have so many other facets, and something that was probably so core to your identity, like your high-paying sales job, is not really a part of your identity at all anymore. I find that super crazy how much we can evolve as humans over a 5-year period, which almost gets me more excited about financial independence because of the flexibility that can come with FI. The fact that I don't really know how I'm going to want to be spending my time in 5 years gets me excited to make sure I have complete autonomy and flexibility to make that decision on my own.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think this idea of FI flexibility for me is about recognizing that you have options now, not just when you reach the finish line, right? It's this kind of mindset of elasticity, I would say, where you don't know what life is going to throw at you. You don't know which obstacles or which opportunities. And it's almost like, for me, a degree of humility of like, I don't even know what I want. And I've completely changed my relationship with goal setting. I think it's really logical to say, I'm going to commit to this goal with the purpose of reaching the goal. I've kind of, for myself, have changed that around to say, I'm setting this goal to set myself on a trajectory, but reaching that goal actually doesn't matter. I need something to like set me in a direction to start walking towards. But my real goal is to start walking that way and then looking around at what is unfolding and what is presenting itself so that I can learn about, what pivots I need to make. So like an example would be, I never had a goal to buy a house. It was not on my radar. I'm from, I moved here to Cincinnati from New York City. It just felt impossible to like ever think about buying a house there. And so even when I moved to Cincinnati, like, why would I want that? And then this house just dropped into my lap and I'm sitting in the house right now. I had no idea that I was going to buy this until I actually bought it. Now, if I was fixated on that 5x40 plan that I initially created, it would have been like, oh man, this is going to really set me back, this down payment. I did not put this into my FIRE plan. I think that's why I've really changed my mind around like, I will reach FI eventually, but the timeline has become irrelevant because I'm already living all of the benefits of a FI life. And I don't think there's this throw the baby out with the bathwater, which like, oh, I don't know when I'm ever going to retire. I don't know when I'm going to start drawing down on my portfolio. So, I'm just going to work forever and not think about it. I don't think that's the answer either. I think you can be financially responsible and spend less than you earn and, save and invest without being so fixated on like a specific number.
Jordan Grummett and I talked about that a lot on a recent podcast episode too. This kind of the beauty in the journey versus the destination. And of course, there's just like so much disappointment once you get, reach a goal or hit a destination because like that's all you were really thinking about and what was all leading up to that. And of course, you put that in the context of your fire journey. And I've definitely reshaped a lot. Like, it's funny that you say 5x40 because that was something that I told people probably 2 or 3 years ago. And it's been such a reframe for me recently, especially considering there might be a lot of big changes that are coming in my life in the near term future. And I'm like, not sure how that's going to impact my, let's call it quest to fire. But at the same time, I just don't really care either. Like, it's just irrelevant.
It's funny that we talk about how we're kind of counterculture and we're rejecting the social norm of a 9 to 5 until we're 65. But then sometimes I feel like the movement adopts this like dogma of how to pursue FI or what it means to pursue FI or rules around certain financial planning concepts that don't necessarily align with real life. I've come to realize that my life is just so dynamic, and that's a good thing. So when I recalculated my FI plan like 10 times, at a certain point, I was just like, whatever, like I'll reach it eventually. I'm not overspending. It's fine. I've also once I reached Coast FI, I basically stopped. I stopped tracking my spending. I stopped budgeting. I stopped calculating. We calculate our net worth because we use Monarch money. So, we're looking at our net worth. A financial goal is only as valuable if you're going to make a change when you reach it, right? You save up to buy a house so that you could buy a house. You save up to retire so that you can quit your job. If I had $10 million tomorrow, I wouldn't change anything about how I'm spending my day to day. It kind of becomes irrelevant. I think this question within the FIRE movement of when can I retire early and how much money do I need to retire, it becomes almost an unhelpful question because a lot of people get stuck. This idea that I can't make a change until I have all of the money that I will ever need for the rest of my life. It's an unhelpful way of looking at things when I think there's a lot of opportunity in the money that you already have, right? So I think a more helpful question could be not, do I have enough money to never, ever make an income again? But do I have enough money to take a risk? That's a much more helpful question, right? That could get you to, if you're listening to this, it's likely that you are in that position. And that can help you to take steps that maybe you wouldn't have taken because you think that you need to have a certain net worth number in order to make some changes.
I couldn't agree more. One thing that came up in your timeline whenever you were pursuing FIRE too was leaving your corporate job. And you talk about these things that were kind of unpredictable. You were very happy in your sales career for a very long time until some changes happened in the company. There was some change of ownership. You got a change in manager and things just started to slide a direction that you weren't happy with. I think through all of that, you kind of came to realize I don't have to deal with this shit. Like I have built up FU money and I am bold and brave and I have the skill set of personal finance and making money behind me that I don't have to put up with something like that. Do I have that right, or anything that you want to add into the kind of gaps that I left?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when you talk to people about the FIRE movement and even early retirement, which I think is such a niche concept, right? I think financial stability is way more interesting than financial independence. However, I had no intentions of retiring from my corporate career at 33, but as happy as I was, and a lot of people experience this, things change in ways that you can't expect. And so I got a new boss and he sucked. He was the most incompetent person I've ever worked with. And I think I was just I didn't realize how spoiled I was for over a decade to work with like really competent, intelligent, creative, amazing people. Like I got very, very lucky for a very long time. And then it changed dramatically. I didn't realize that working for this person was going to be, I just thought it was annoying. Like a lot of people are like, oh, my boss doesn't know what he's doing. Like it's annoying. Like I'll give you an example. When he first kind of came into his role, he set up a meeting with me. He got into this new role. He became my boss. He canceled this meeting 10 times. And so when we finally had the meeting, I told him that I thought it was extremely disrespectful that, you know, he would disregard me that way. Like I've never had someone do that to me. I said, I find it really hard to believe that you're in the position that you're in now and you really can't manage your own calendar. Like, and also you have an assistant. To me, I find that hard to believe that it's really that hard for you to schedule a meeting. So I have to assume that this is a respect issue. And that's not okay with me. I kind of set the tone, like kind of early on, what I would tolerate and what I wouldn't. And it kind of evolved into, you know, around this time, Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, there was all these kind of what I would call performative diversity and inclusion initiatives that corporations would, you know, start. It just felt like bullshit to me. And it really opened a can of worms because I found myself in a position where I was with the company for 9 years. It started as a female-founded and run organization with 5 offices around the world that were run by women. And then it was acquired and it turned into a boys' club. And it all felt like it happened so slowly and quietly over a long period of time. And also I had moved to Cincinnati and I wasn't like in the belly of the beast. I was a little out of touch. I was starting economy. I was adventuring. I was focused on other things. And it's like I woke up one day and realized that I was the only woman on my team because all of the other women had fled the organization. I had this awful boss. And I was the lowest paid person on the team while I was also one of the highest performers. So when I'm being asked all these questions about diversity and inclusion as the only woman on the team, it was annoying. And I said, if you really want to do something about it, it's simple, pay parity. Why am I the lowest paid person on this team? By that point, I didn't have a raise for 3 years. And just because I got those, 20% raises in the past doesn't mean that I signed up to never get a raise again. But I think that I was so grateful during that good run and the fact that I did the Camino and I moved away. And it was like, I didn't feel the need to ask for more until it was like abundantly clear that I was being held to a higher standard than my male colleagues. And so made a big stink about it. And they were like, oh no, we're not actually going to do anything about this initiative. We're just going to talk about it. And so they declined my request for pay parity. And I looked at my money and said, I have way too much money to tolerate bullshit. And that's when I decided to leave. And if anyone is curious, I did write a very juicy exit letter on my way out. And if you go to my website, there's a pop-up that comes up and you can enter your email address and I share that exit letter with you. Because I just feel like if you are in an environment like that, just get the fuck out, right? Like you have too much money to tolerate that.
And it was a juicy letter. Of course, you baited me and I had to go read it. So I'm on your email newsletter now. You make it sound easy, like it was just like really kind of easy to stick it to them. But I'm guessing during that time period, or maybe some of the time leading up to that too, you did a lot of work around your own mindset. I don't know if you came from somewhat of a scarcity mindset whenever it came to money, but what did some of that mindset work look like leading up to that? Did you feel comfortable just walking away from a high paying job, regardless of like how much of a nest egg you have? I still would find it really challenging to leave security and a paycheck.
Yes. So a couple of things, like when it first became clear to me, like I can't stay here, my first gut reaction was like, I just have to find another job. And as I was kind of going down that road, at the same time, I was also talking to my 5 friends about my situation. And they're like, you have enough money, just quit. You don't need another job. You've got this, side hustle money coming in from podcasting. Economy is It was not profitable, but it's on its way. It will get there eventually. We just got there. In like the fourth event, I'm like squeezing out the tiniest bit of profit, but it wasn't designed to be a source of income for me. It was supposed to be a retirement project, you know? And so surrounding myself with abundant people, like if I would ask my mom what I should do in that situation, don't say anything. Don't ruffle feathers. Like just be a good girl and keep your high paying job. Right. But when I talk to my 5 friends about it, they're like, get the fuck out. And not only get out, but here are all the reasons why you're okay.
Mhm.
Right. Because these are very intelligent, rational people. And so going over spreadsheets with them, you know, talking about this at length, I think they gave me some reassurance on the money side of things and that I would be okay. But I think what helped even more was almost this mental jujitsu that I had to play with myself. So I didn't tell myself I'm retiring from my corporate career. What I told myself at the time is I'm going to take a year and I'm going to experiment if I can replace my corporate salary through self-employment. If I could launch a speaking career, if I could somehow leverage economy to do something else, right? If I could do more voice acting. Like I remember I made this list of 14 potential streams of income that I wanted to pursue in this experimental year. And then I told myself if I couldn't replace my income after a year, then I'd go find another job. Well, it's been like 3.5 years and I did not replace my income and I never found another job. It's almost like I was able to rationalize it to get me to make the move, but there was a ton of fear around it, for sure. For sure.
I would imagine I'd have to do some of that mental jujitsu that you talked about as well. I do that in so many cases where it's just like, let's not think about this as an absolute decision, but
Right.
how can you scale that back and look at it as a temporary decision?
Mhm.
And I don't know, there's so much reassurance. If you're on the path to FI, you probably have tons of money already that you can easily take off a year. Jillian Johnsred was like the first person that really like kind of messed me up about this concept. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, probably like every year I could be taking a month off of work and be fine. And she gave plenty of examples of people who took time off of work, took a retirement, and then came out with more money because
Yeah.
they worked on a house project that they turned into an Airbnb or went back to school and picked up this side with the skill they learned, picked up this side job. Or it's just like crazy stories of people once they're given the space to pursue other things, realizing that their W-2 employment isn't the only way they're ever going to make money. And we're great savers typically, and we have this nest egg to fall back on if need be. Like there's just like so many reasons why you shouldn't be putting up with bad employment.
Totally. Well, it's funny, like we have our emergency funds, right? We all agree that that's a necessary thing to have, yet we don't constitute a toxic work environment or not liking our job as an emergency. Why not? If you're miserable in your life and you have properly diagnosed where that's coming from, why not use your money to fix that? I heard somewhere, maybe someone can help me quote this person. They said, if you have a problem, but you have money that can fix that problem, then you don't actually have a problem. You have an inconvenience. Like money is just a tool. The goal here isn't to sit on a pile of money. The goal is to use money as a tool to create a life focused on what matters. The money itself doesn't actually matter. And what I think is so interesting about the FIRE movement or this whole just even general personal finance, it's like glorifying this tool. Imagine you had a hammer and you use the hammer to build the house and you're giving someone a tour of your beautiful house. And all they keep asking you about is, well, what kind of hammer did you use? Well, where are you storing the hammer? Did you put any jewels on the hammer? Like, no, I picked the hammer up and I swung it and I built this thing, right? It's not about the hammer. Like, so
That is
And
funny.
so I think about that with the FIRE community. It's like we're so focused on the tool. And I think we need to kind of move past that at a certain point and focus on what we're going to build with the tool. A big part of winning with money is no longer thinking about money. That's how you know
Definitely.
that you won.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to spend some time upfront making sure you're using the right tool and that you're building the thing that you want to build. But at the end of the day, like could maybe optimize like, oh, this hammer is the best kind of hammer for this certain job. But if you just get started on the project and get going with the hammer that you have sometimes, like you're going to make more headway than waiting around and trying to optimize on that. And at the end of the day, it's really about the house that you built and not the tools that you're using too. So it's like an interesting conversation. Yes, like new FI people, spend some time like making sure that you're not, running into the winds in your path to FI. But at the end of the day, like you're going to get to a point where you have the law of diminishing return on like how much optimization you can really do.
Yes. And I think of it as a season, right? Like I'm really glad that I had my season of like realizing that personal finance is important and I wanted to prioritize it and I got out of debt and I saved and invested and I got myself to financial stability and then Coast FI. And I think that, yes, let's spend that season getting the tools in place and becoming financially literate enough to be able to self-manage our money with confidence. That's so important. But it's a season. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's 2-3 years of my journey that it took to fully feel like I knew what I was doing with my money. Got to be something else after that, right?
Yeah. Sometimes that's the struggle. Like you get so excited, you get into that first season, you optimize all of these things, you get on the path, and then you're just like, now what? And it's like the only thing that you really know is what you are currently doing around this optimization and getting better and better with improving your finances. But eventually you have to like turn that stone over and now start to focus on some of the hard questions. Like, how do I want to design my life? What do I want to do with my time? Like what gifts do I want to give to this world? Who do I want to be surrounded by? And those can be really hard questions.
Yeah. I think the financial planning questions are simply easier. And I think that we tend to get our sense of security from like, okay, I feel safe around my money and that this will ultimately lead to happiness. But money is like an external circumstance, right? Happiness is a state of mind that you cultivate by like how you use your time. Yeah. And there's obviously some overlap here. Like when you have money, it can affect your options for how you spend your time and that kind of stuff. So like, it's not that it's completely separate. There is some overlap there. But at a certain point, I think that we need to almost like recognize that the tools and the habits that help us reach financial goals aren't necessarily the same tools and habits that will allow us to enjoy our good fortune, right? It's almost you have to kind of get to a place where you allow yourself to relax and also kind of put your sense of security again on more solid ground. Like you could have a black swan event and it could totally wipe you out. And people in the FIRE movement have spent so much time and energy on financial plannings that they trying to plan for every contingency and everything that could possibly go wrong. And that is warranted and valid. We want to be responsible with our money and plan for the future. I'm not saying throw that out. I'm saying we can get overly fixated on it to our detriment. I made my clients over $50 million when I was working. And I would say a lot of people that are attracted to the FIRE movement are very ambitious, accomplished, impressive as fuck people. The idea that I couldn't figure out making money for myself, if it really came down to it, if I had a health issue, if something happened to my husband, if like something that I can't anticipate in this moment, the idea that I couldn't figure it out is kind of ludicrous. Like, it's not about the money. It's about my skills and my connections and my intellect and my sense of humor and all of those things that help me get the money. I can use those again to figure it out. What's interesting to me about financial planning in general is it's this almost pessimistic exercise of how much is enough? It's like scarcity, right? Like, do I have enough? When am I going to get more? How much is enough? When is this external circumstance going to make me feel safe? Mm-hmm. And yet, quitting your job, retiring early, taking a risk is an optimistic leap. And so how do you make that switch? How do you switch from the pessimistic planning to the leap of optimism?
Do you have an answer for that? Like,
I think it's investing in an abundance mindset because that pessimism is rooted in scarcity. Mm-hmm. I think the optimism is rooted in this abundance mindset. And so when I think about abundance, it's all about what you ingest, right? When we think about how we want to feel physically, we're really careful about what we eat, what we put in our body, how we move our body. I think the same thing for abundance is a mind state, it's a mindset. And so we have to be careful about what we ingest mentally. Who are we surrounding ourselves with? Who is influencing us? What kind of books are we reading? What kind of media are we watching? How are we taking care of ourselves? For me, I had mentioned the people that I tapped into, those abundance mindset people, they influenced me. There's also like a lot of books that I've read about rest, and I have a whole list. Now I like kind of want to pull it up. Just abundance-based books. Even something like The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Like that's one of my favorite books because it gets you into this mindset of like shifting your perspective around the obstacles that life throws at you. I mean, even to this day, the main thing I got out of that book is when something feels like it's going wrong, I ask myself, why is this a good thing? And my journal is very much like me coaching myself in, I start out complaining about something and then I stop and go, okay, that's enough. Why is that? Like, can you think of any reason why this is a good thing? And I always can. For me, it's books and it's people, and it's being really careful about what you expose your mind to.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest benefits of being a part of the FI community is this abundance mindset. And it's kind of weird because so much of it is rooted in scarcity around money, but many people that I'd love to follow have a true abundance mindset. Someone like you, and you really messed me up in a time that like I'm really searching for some more boldness right now, doing some research on you and hearing you talk and kind of see your journey unfold was really inspiring. And I've been grasping for a lot of that. I've already mentioned a couple of people I've recently interviewed, and you can tell it's a trend through the summer that I am seeking and looking for. And there's so many people in this community that have an abundance mindset, that are bold, and are just clear-cut examples of people that have taken a chance on themselves, bet on themselves, and great things have followed. And like anyone listening to this show, look back, like you have so many examples right now. Like the fact that at 20 years old, I was in a negative net worth, and now 10 years later, I'm in a, $500,000 net worth, and I had no kind of personal finance skills 10 years ago. If my bank accounts all went to zero, how fast, if I really needed to, could I rebuild some of the income or the money that I lost? Probably fairly fast.
Yeah.
So like knowing that, just having that thought in the back of my head makes me realize like you should take more risk, or you should allow yourself to scratch itches that you're currently grasping for, and you're going to be totally okay. And like you too, like 1 year later, if it's all going to shit, like you can go back and find another job. It's okay.
Yeah, totally. I think one of my favorite things about money, and it's like in so many ways, there are just moments that I get bored of talking about money, right? Like even on my podcast. So the podcast is called Optimal Finance Daily. It's a daily show where I read you an article from a personal finance blogger, and then I offer like 300 words of commentary on each article, 10 minutes or less every single day. So I'm coming up on like 4 years. So it's like over 1,000 articles. It's just a lot of the same thing over and over. And so sometimes I get bored talking about money because I feel like once you know the basics, spend less than you earn, read The Simple Path to Wealth, and like you're fine. Like, let's go do something else now, right?
Yes.
But so I have like, it's almost like these things contradict each other because that's on the one side of things. And then on the other side, I feel like money is incredible. It is the only thing in life that you can completely mess up with like no long-term consequences, right?
Yeah.
You can't say that about your health. You can't say that about relationships. Like in those areas that are to me, the most important things in life, you could do irreparable damage there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with money, you could completely screw it up and then just like rebuild and it's fine, right? It's this impersonal, dispassionate tool. But culturally, we have just so much shame and embarrassment. We confuse our net worth with our self-worth, like that kind of stuff. There's a lot of emotion tied up in it that I feel like we are asking this impersonal and dispassionate tool to do more emotional labor than it's capable of doing. Money can solve money problems, but we're asking it to solve like emotional problems because we don't know how to do the work ourselves. And when you finally reach your FI number or give yourself permission to leave your job and you have, full autonomy over your time and you have all the time and space in your life, what I've found, and my friends who have done this have found, is that your reward for reaching your FI number or living the benefits of FI is usually an existential crisis because you come to realize that money is not what's going to make you happy.
It wasn't the solution that you were necessarily looking for.
Exactly, yeah. And if you're in good mental health, when you have a lot of free time on your hands, you're going to choose to do good things with that time. When you're in bad mental health, you are going to squander that time and it's going to turn into a nightmare. Like, it is very possible to have too much time on your hands. Ask me how I know. It is very possible.
Well, let's finish out this conversation with one more thread, which was my favorite thing that I really learned from you, or my kind of big takeaway from researching you, which was separating finances from work. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, maybe illustrating how you did that through economy. I find that project really interesting. You called it a retirement project in this conversation itself. And I know it's just becoming profitable, but it's the work that you do and maybe some of the work that defines a part of your identity, which I find really interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about separating finances from work?
When you say the word retirement, most people perceive that to mean not working. And especially when you retire young, I don't think it's about not working. I know people that retire in their 50s and 60s that literally are allergic to anything that looks like work and they're completely miserable, right? And I think it's because work and productivity, when it's right-sized for you, is very important for well-being, right? We're not designed to just sit around and watch TV all day. And again, if you're pursuing FIRE, you're likely very ambitious. You found your career rewarding in some way, even if it was just the pursuit of accomplishment. I don't think of retirement as not working. I think of it as separating your finances from your work. And so when I try to explain to people, I retired at 33, what I'm really saying is that I'm unemployed, but I'm not worried about money. And the work that I do is not driven by any financial need. This kind of idea of not working almost confuses, like, what is even work, right? Mm-hmm. So think about what I think is the hardest job in the world, which is parenting. Most people would say my job as parenting is just a part of my life. It's just what I do, right? But if you were hired as a nanny and you're getting paid for it, well, now all of a sudden it's a job. It's your career. It's your work. So what is work? Is it only if you get paid for it? Is it only if you're obligated or if you don't want to do it? Is it only if it's within the confines of a job? No, it's the way you're contributing to the world, whether you need it financially or not. What the FIRE movement is kind of moving towards is this isn't about not working. This is about right-sizing the role that work plays in our lives. And it's about having full control over what I work on, who I work with, what I create in the world, when and where, how much time I spend, all of that. I have this analogy I like to say to kind of demonstrate my point here. I think we can all agree that 3 meals a day is kind of a good amount to eat. We want to eat 3 meals a day. Great. Well, what if the societal norm was that you need to eat 6 meals a day, supplied by a corporate overlord who's going to stand over you and make sure that you shove all that food down your throat? Now, the FIRE movement, it's almost as if we're saying, fine, I won't eat it all then. I don't like that model, so I'm going to go to the far extreme and say, I'm not going to eat it all then. I'm going to starve myself. Whereas I feel like what I'm saying is, why don't we just go back to 3 meals a day that we prepare ourselves? That's kind of how I think about this concept of retirement is about not working, and that work is actually a really important part of well-being. I think working less is better than not working at all.
I would agree with that. And just having you decide when you want to eat, what you're going to eat, at how long it's going to take you to eat, all of those, whenever it becomes a personal choice, it's probably more fulfilling and rewarding, in all honesty. But then it can fit around your lifestyle. If you like to work out first thing in the morning versus go eat first thing in the morning, great. Like, then you can do that. So, Diana, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was fun researching you and getting to know you a little bit more as well. A big part of what you're putting out into the world right now is this conference called Economy. I know you're pretty much sold out on tickets right now, so we probably won't be able to get people to 2025 conference unless they already have a ticket. But do you mind sharing a little bit about that conference in case someone's interested in attending in the future?
Yeah. So the Economy Conference exists because FI is better with friends. Like, what is the point of retiring early if you have no one to hang out with? And most people don't have a lot of people in their immediate social circle who get this pursuit, right? Or understand their interest in fire. I feel that the Economy Conference solves two key issues for people pursuing financial independence. The first is that after you've optimized all the things, most of the path to FI is a waiting game, and it can get boring. I say come to Economy to fuel the fire. I really try to put together content that will teach you something that completely surprises you. And this is why even over 30% of our audience is already FI and retired, and they still come because there's always more to learn about lifestyle design and what you're going to do with your time and asking these kind of bigger questions that we discussed today. And so find your 5 friends, ask bigger questions. And yeah, it happens in Cincinnati in March every year. We are doing our 5th event in 2025. I can't believe that it's almost sold out. I have been waiting. I've been working on this for 6 years, and I have been waiting for this day where I don't really have to market the event anymore, which is exciting because now I get to 1000% focus on putting together the best show that I ever have. And so I'm very, very excited about it.
I'm excited to attend for the first time as well, see some of my FI friends, but also make some new FI friends. And yeah, you're right. You didn't market it very well because I had to reach out to you and be like, girl, I want a ticket. How do I get a ticket? And you're like, wow, that was good timing because I'm releasing them tomorrow. And I was like, okay, cool. I was by my inbox the entire time the next day. And I'm glad I did because I think of those 200 tickets, you pretty much sold every single one of those.
Yeah. So basically, we have 500. Our capacity is 500. At the last event in March, 300 tickets sold to the existing audience.
That's crazy.
That just shows how much people really love this thing, not patting my own back, but
Pat, come on. You did a great job.
Without, over a year in advance, without knowing who any of the speakers are, 300 people were like, I'm coming back next year. And so I had 200 tickets left, and I had sent one email to my list this year. I'm a very bad marketer, right? I sent one email to my list this year, and then I just opened up tickets. I had 200 left, 150 sold in 24 hours, and now we're just trickling. I think we have 7 left as of this moment. I had a whole second email pitch ready to go, and now I feel like I need to change it to just be like, sorry, they're gone now.
See you in 2026.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, final question for you. If you had the opportunity to teach a 16-week class to a group of graduating college seniors on a topic that isn't normally covered in the classroom, what would you teach and how would you teach it?
I think I would teach something that I'm learning very intimately myself right now, which is how to rest. It's funny how that plays with work and rest, right? Just because you're not working doesn't mean you're resting.
Yeah.
And scrolling on social media is not resting. Watching TV is not resting. I'm reading a lot about this because I really struggle with sleep. Even sleep is not resting. I just read this book, Sacred Rest, it's called. There was this one line that stood out to me that was like, whoa. And it was, sleep is not rest. Sleep is your reward for resting well. There's these 7 kinds of rest: emotional rest, social rest, mental rest, physical rest, spiritual rest, creative rest. I'm just really scratching the surface on how this plays out for me. Because even though I don't work, right? You're doing air quotes here. I mean, I have 4 hours a week of paid work, and then Economy has seasons where I'm really busy. But I have a lot of time, and I'm still trying to figure out how to recover from the burnout of my career. And it's been 3.5 years. I think if I would have been taught this when I was younger, I wouldn't have accumulated so much stress in my body that makes it harder to manage now. I would first become an expert on rest and become well rested myself. And then I would teach a class on it.
That's cool. And I'm sure that'd be a sold out class.
Yeah, I could imagine, like you're saying, how would I do it? Like one of the things that I do is called yoga nidra. It's non-sleep deep rest. And it's almost like a meditative thing, but you like lay down and you get your body like super, super comfortable, which a lot of meditation, like they teach you to like spine erect and you're trying to stay alert. But like this is really about relaxation. And I can imagine just like putting a bunch of places for people to like lay down and we can like non-sleep deep rest together.
I would love that. Once again, this is Diania Merriam. She is the creator of the Economy Conference and host of Optimal Finance Daily. Diania, this was a pleasure. Thanks for so much time. I know we're right at time now, so it was a blast having a conversation with you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the episode. As always, I appreciate your kind words. If you want to leave us a rating and review on your podcast player right now, that would absolutely make my day. If you want to find episode show notes, our blog, and other great resources, head over to tsirpodcast.com. If you have follow-up questions, an idea for a future episode, or just want to say hi, we have a contact form on our website, and those messages go straight into my inbox, and I promise you, I will reply. But all right, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. I love you all, and you're not alone. Let's keep making it through our struggles together.